Now, just over 2 weeks to go until David Haye takes on Audley Harrison for the WBA World Heavyweight title. Craig Slater is with the Haye camp today. We can speak to him now. Very good morning to you. Press getting their first chance to see David Haye in training later today. What sort of shape is he in?
Well, you'd expect him to be in good shape. As you say, just 17 days to go now until he faces the man over my shoulder there, Audley A-Force Harrison, in the second defence of his World Heavyweight title. So no question about it. This, at the moment, is the most intense period of his training. He'll be having 2 sessions a day, 3 sessions a day, in fact, because he's going to be doing a session for us in front of the cameras. His trainer and manager, Adam Booth, has dug out the wedge boots again. These are a slightly different pair that he used in the fight against Nikolai Valuev, but Audley Harrison 6'6" tall, so you know David Haye will be punching upwards again. But as I say, the most intense period of the training camp. He should be having his most intense sparring at the moment in this ring. At least that's what we assumed, but of course we said all this before his last fight against John Ruiz, and it turned out that he'd had no sparring at all because he picked up a cut early in his training camp and so wasn't able to spar. So it's always a bit of cloak and dagger surrounding the preparations for a big fight. You could probably hear the train rumbling overhead. David Haye's gym's actually in a railway arch in Vauxhall. We were able to actually sneak in here about a week ago just to take a little peek at how his preparations were coming along. It's very restricted what we can actually film. We're not allowed to film sparring and that kind of thing, but we could see that David Haye was in good shape. He's looking pretty lean already and moving around as fluidly, you know, as he'd be hoping to at this point. And we have heard that David Haye himself expects to be lighter than he was in his last fight. He weighed 15 stone 10 against John Ruiz. We expect him to maybe be around 15.5 stone, 15 stone 7, 15 stone 8, that kind of thing. And that does bode well. And he has actually said that he's much more motivated for this fight than he was against John Ruiz, because there has been, you know, such a war of words in the build-up, because these two, once the best of friends, are now the best of enemies.
You mentioned the height difference there. We heard from Frank Bruno earlier mentioning that Audley Harrison will have an advantage. Big southpaw, isn't he? Now, what plans will David Haye be making for that aspect of it?
Well, southpaws are always dangerous, particularly early in a fight when you aren't adjusted to the kind of punching style. And Audley Harrison, in the run-up to this fight, has set great store by the fact that David Haye was knocked out in the amateurs by a southpaw called Jim Twite. But as to his southpaw professional experience, David Haye, well, it actually lasts for less than a minute. This was his fight when he won the European title 5 years ago against a Ukrainian called Alexander Gurov. Now, the best way to deal with a southpaw traditionally is to be able to throw the straight right hand well, because the southpaw will be throwing his power punches with his left hand. He'll be trying to throw left hooks. If you can throw a hard straight right hand, then you can get inside the arc of that southpaw left hook, and that is exactly what David Haye did to devastating effect against Alexander Gurov 5 years ago. He reckons tall southpaws are made for him. But of course, Audley Harrison's been saying all along in the run-up to this that he reckons if his left hook, his left hand detonates on David Haye's chin, he knows what the outcome's going to be. That's going to be David Haye getting knocked out.
Well, we saw that straight right graphically there. Now, wonderfully, here on Sky Sports News, you've brought us an insight into both camps, haven't you, in the build-up to this one. How does his camp compare to Harrison's?
Yeah, well, it's chalk and cheese. I mean, we're in a railway arch in Vauxhall on the south bank of the Thames. It's very much an inner city vibe here. You can hear the trains rumbling overhead from time to time. Audley, he got into the country yesterday. He had to be here. He was mandated that he had to be here 18 days before the fight. Haymaker Promotions wanted him to be able to, you know, to deal with the press and help with the publicity in the run-up to the fight. But that meant that Audley Harrison had to fly from Los Angeles to the UK on his birthday. He celebrated his 39th birthday over the mid-Atlantic, which was a bit of an irritation for him. He thought that the Haye camp were deliberately trying to pull a little stroke here. But as you say, yes, Audley Harrison, he's been up in the San Bernardino Mountains, just next to Los Angeles. We caught up with him a little over a week ago, and yeah, he's enjoying it up there. He reckons he's at an absolutely flawless camp. He was visited a couple of times by his wife and his little daughter Ariella, and he's been in very good spirits. But mostly the camp's been about hard work. We've seen him pounding the slopes of the Big Bear Mountains, following in the trail of the likes of Shane Mosley, Oscar De La Hoya. Nassim Hamed had a camp up there once, and Lennox Lewis. He used to favour a training camp in Big Bear. Audley Harrison claims if Lennox was to look in on his camp, he'd give it 10 out of 10. But it has been an irritation for him that he now has to come back down to sea level 18 days before the fight. Because ideally, if you're undertaking altitude training, then you want to be coming back to sea level around about 5 or 6 days before the fight, because then you get the benefit of it. You've got the extra red blood cells in your system, and that helps you recycle oxygen around your muscles so much more effectively. So that hasn't happened. I understand to try and combat that, Audley Harrison's going to be using an oxygen tent, a hyperbaric chamber. He's going to try and flood his system with oxygen, perhaps sleep in it in the run-up to the fight as well, to try and keep the positive effects of altitude training going in his system. Whether that benefits him or not, well, that'll be proved on fight night as well. But we will be able to see it, this fight, and if you're lucky enough to possess a three-dimensional television, we will be seeing it in 3D. It's going to be the first major fight in the UK screened in 3D. There's one of the cameras there. Believe it or not, the 3D cameras that they're going to be using on fight night cost £200,000 a pop, and there's going to be 6 of them. So the cameras alone for the 3D broadcast are going to cost £1.2 million. It really is a huge occasion, this. And David Haye, in the run-up to this fight, he's come up with a kind of natty catchphrase. He reckons this fight is going to be the three-dimensional beating of a one-dimensional fighter. That's what he calls Audley Harrison.
Okay, Craig, thank you. We'll be back with you throughout the day. For the moment, thank you very much indeed. That fight in 3D. Unbelievable.